Hello and welcome to another edition of Issues with Jide. Here we talk about actions and inactions of those who shape our political and national landscape and how these impact us positively or otherwise. I am Theophilus Ilama, standing in for Ibrahim Shita, who is currently celebrating his bundle of joy. Congratulations, my brother. Today we are going to be talking about the federal government's target of sponsors of protests in Nigeria. Of course, joining me via Zoom is the maestro himself, Babajide Kolade-Otitoju. Now, in the course of the program, we will take your questions. But first, we'd like you to subscribe to our YouTube channel and drop your comments, your questions rather, in the comment section. It's also important to mention that we can only read comments with human names and the ones based on the subject matter. Now let's move to the issue of discussion, of course. Now the federal government said that diaspora sponsors of the End Bad Governance protesters have been placed on the watch list to be arrested when entering the country. Now Comptroller General of Nigeria Immigration Service Kemi Nanagandap disclosed this at a meeting of heads of security chiefs and service chiefs convened by the Chief of Defense Staff, the General Christopher Musa at the Defense Headquarters in Abuja. Of course, the immigration boss said the service has, in response to the protest, deployed more officers to land and airport borders to ensure effective manning of those entry points. All right, so let's bring in the maestro, of course, who is joining us via Zoom. First, BKO, let's get your reaction of this issue. The federal government is targeting sponsors of protests in Nigeria. What's your take?
Yes, I know that during the week, in the days leading to the protests, just a few days before August 1, the government began to really try to break the backbone of the protesters. It is difficult to organize anything. I'm not saying it is impossible, but it's difficult to organize anything without some measure of funding. So, if you remember NSAS, there was a lot of funding from outside Nigeria and within Nigeria as well. So what the government looked out for was the source of funding for the protests. Because where, for example, during NSAS, people were served food, people were served soft drinks and all that, people were served bottled water. All of these things cost money, and it must have been because some people were willing to bring the money for the protest to happen. So in this case, there were some Nigerians who made some account details available for the purpose of getting people to contribute money, to post money into those accounts from where those monies can then be made available to organizers of the protests. There is a bank account linked to one of the major organizers and galvanizers of the protest in Nigeria. And the moment the NSA got wind of that account number, he moved in and contacted the bank, and the account was blocked. You see, the government can claim, and even at this time, they are claiming that they are going after the organizers of the violent protests. Organizers of violent protests. So when they talk like this, it is with a view to finding a reason to go after the people who organized protests that got violent. Now, who are the organizers of the protests that got violent? The protests that got violent were in northern Nigeria, and the far northern, a few states in the south. Some protests got violence. Some blocked the roads, like in River State, they blocked the east-west road. But largely, the protests turned violent in the northwest of our country. Talking about Katsina, Kaduna, Kano, and then Gombe in the northwest too, Borno. On that first day, but the governor moved in quickly, and he was the first to impose a curfew. So this it didn't really it didn't allow the protest to go on for so long before stepping in with a curfew. So, and then Gombe too, the protest went violent, but Kano, Kaduna, and Katsina were the places where the protests really went violent. The protesters went overboard, and curfews had to be imposed. So when they are talking about organizers of violent protests, I believe that it's just a means of finding a reason to go after the organizers of the protest, because some of these organizers that we are talking about, the protests that they organized were not violent. So if the protests were not violent, then what would be the reason for the decision to go after them? Protests is a legitimate thing, as long as you do not violate the rights of other people in the process. I know that the government will not sit idly. The government will try to punish some people for the protests that have clearly embarrassed the government. So I expect the clampdown to even go beyond the Northwest, where more than 800 people have already been arrested. So now if you are a protester or an organizer of a protest and they have evidence that the protest got violent, then they are definitely going to come after you and arrest you. Everywhere in the world where protests turn violent, arrests are made. The organizers are holding, the people that they can pick up on the streets are usually also arrested. But as the point that I'm making is, accounts have been blocked. Some of those accounts blocked were not actually accounts of protesters linked to or accounts of organizers of protests that went violent. So this is the situation that we have found ourselves. Now, can those people come to Nigeria without without expecting to be arrested? We've been told that now that they are on the watch list, and if they make moves to come into Nigeria, they will definitely be arrested, because they have already been identified as sponsors of the protest. Now, if you are going after everyone who sponsored protests, whether the protest turned violent or not, then people are going to argue that this is a clampdown on innocent people in a democracy. For example, the protests in Lagos did not go violent, did not get violent. And the Lagos State Police Commissioner even bantered with the protesters, was with them, talking to them, and they largely cooperated with him. If some of the organizers of the protests in Lagos, who funded the protests in Lagos, are arrested, people are going to ask why. What have they done wrong? So in the coming days, we'll see clearly what the government plans to do. But the government also has to be careful. If it is seen as trying to punish everyone who got involved in the protest, whether they were involved in violent protests or not, it can anger civil society and other categories of Nigerians to even make future protests more difficult to handle. Already, they are talking about protesting again in October. The argument is that the demands were not met and that the president's speech fell below expectation. So government should not do anything that will appear like in a democracy it is trying to muzzle free speech or take away the rights of people to protest against what they believe is not right about the way the government is, the government of the country is carrying out its activities. So it is my view that the government has to be careful in clamping down on people who are involved, even in funding and organizing of the protest. If you have evidence that some people organized protests in Kano in which people are calling for regime change, calling for military coup, which people were burning houses, looting houses, just as we saw in Katsina and Jigawa, where even the home of a lawmaker was first looted before it was set ablaze. If you have cast iron evidence that some people were actually behind those protests, that some people gave money, because I've had some of the people in government saying that they have the list now, they have a list of people who organized the protests. If you have evidence, given the way those protests went in some of those states, you can arrest such people and question them about the extent of their involvement in those protests. My feeling is that protests have to be organized in a way that does not breach the Constitution, in a way that does not take away the rights of other people. You know, that does not lead to violence, loss of lives and property. In this case, we lost lives in the north, in the far north, and we lost property as well. So if the government has evidence that some people actually were paying people to get involved in this kind of protests, then the government has every reason to hold them into detention and try to get information from them. And if they cannot prove that, they were innocent of the accusation, they may have to go and fight it out with government in a court of law. People if government has evidence that some people actually brought out money for people to be sewing Russian flags in a sovereign Nigeria, such people deserve to be arrested, because a lot of the people that they gave these flags to did not even know why they were carrying such flags. So if government is convinced, if the security agencies are convinced of the culpability of some people in getting tailors in Kano, Katsina, and Kaduna to sew the Russian flag and wave the Russian flag while protesting and asking for regime change, a violent military coup in a democracy, then such people have they have questions to answer. But my own feeling is that some of the people who had been accused of actually sponsoring these protests, making their bank details available for people to put in money. Some of them were not actually involved in violent protests, except if in the course of evidence, the DSS and the police can actually lay their hands on concrete proof that they were part of the organizing of the violent protests in some of those states. Then and only then can I agree that the government would be right to go after. So because the protests really went violent, people died, people lost their homes, they lost their business premises. And the looting was on an extraordinary scale. And in such a situation, you wonder what is going on. Protests are not they are not supposed to lead to looting. So if you are arrested while looting, you have to answer for it. If you were arrested because you were found to be sponsoring people to fly, to wave the flag of another country and call for a violent change of government, then you have to be prepared to answer questions upon being picked up. As we speak, close to 2,000 people, by my estimation, have been arrested, especially in those flashpoint states, just like Katsina, Gombe, and other states where protests went really, really violent.
All you have just said, we are getting reactions on our YouTube page, and it's quite hot in here. A lot of people are reacting. All right, so let me take some reactions. And there's a question that came up by Mark Oyaide. He says, BKO, do you think the apprehension of the sponsors of the protest is as important as addressing the cause of the protest, that is high cost of food and petrol? BK, I'll leave you to answer that question.
Yes, that's a very good question. Arresting the sponsors will not necessarily solve the problem. And that was why I warned that if government was not careful, it will further enrage the protesters and will get them to prepare for even bigger protests in the coming months. You know, they've already said that they are going to protest in this, on October 1, if their demands are not met. So if we start arresting the arrowheads of the protests across the country, whether the protests were violent or they were not violent, whether some of those protests, arrowheads of the protests were involved in plotting violent protests or non-violent protests, then it will seem like you are trying to take the rights of people away, the right to protest. For me, the protests in Lagos, for example, went well. protests went well, no violence, and they conducted themselves largely in a peaceful manner. If somebody was found to have spent money to arrange the protest in Lagos, I do not believe that such a person should be arrested because, in my view, he has done nothing wrong. He didn't burn any car, he didn't damage any house, he did not. People have a right to complain about what they do not like about the way the government is running the affairs of the country. What we cannot stand is protests getting violent, protesters blocking roads, protesters making life even more unbearable for other people by looting their business premises. What happened in Kano is extremely shameful, So perpetrators of that level of looting, that kind of protest, because that is not a protest, it is barefaced stealing. Barefaced looting cannot be called a protest. So such people, if organizers of that kind of protest were found, they should be arrested and made to explain why things went this way. And we've had that people were paid money to wave those flags, paid money to protest in Kano. Shehu Sane, the Senator Shehu Sane said that some people were paid money. If there is evidence that the violent protests that we saw in Kano were actually orchestrated by some individuals with sinister motives, who even went to the point of giving money to people to protest in the manner that they are protested, then they deserve to be arrested and asked questions. But the hunger in the land has to be addressed. The very weak state of our currency has to be addressed. People like the CBN governor, who will sit down and allow our currency to degenerate to like 1,600 naira per dollar, they should know that they are not doing their job well. It's not until they are told. If we cannot manage our currency and keep our currency strong, if you watch our currency, you allow it to degenerate in value to the point that we're exchanging the naira to about 1,600. It's extremely shameful. And I expected much better than this from people like Cardoso, Wale Edun, and the rest of them. I expected much better. No country leaves its currency to flounder. Even China tampers with its currency. China deliberately devalued its currency so that its products will become cheap and encourage exports. So I still think that the big issues that came out of the protest must be addressed. That is the hunger in the land. And you cannot address this hunger in the land in an import-dependent economy without looking critically at the value of our currency. That is the job that Cardoso was given, and that is a job that he cannot say with all honesty that he has done well about.
So let's move to other comments here. Taiwo Odunlade says, good evening, BQ and Ibrahim. Okay, Taiwo Ibrahim isn't here, but he will be here soon. Okay, Filade says, yeah, good evening, BQ. It's evident that the protest was designed to fail. Why were the organizers reluctant to identify with the protest? Why did they appear irresponsible? Okay, Taiwo Odunlade says, I've said long ago that those organizers were, faceless organizers were prepared to fail, and they failed. Of course, we have several comments coming in on the issue for discussion on the program, of course. But BQ, before we go, there's been this daunting issue about the protest where journalists were actually harassed doing the job. I'd like you to speak on this particular matter?
You see, beating up journalists, harassing journalists doing their work is something that our security operatives enjoy doing. I think it gives them joy simply manhandling, simply assaulting, and simply molesting a journalist. It shows that a lot of them are irresponsible and they are not trained in the art of managing protests, managing protests, especially protests that turn violent. They do not want people to report what was happening during the protest. They felt that by constantly reporting the protests that the protesters were being lionized, were being reinvigorated. That is the way they think. But people have made up their minds to protest. Even if the press stay away, they will still protest. So trying to stop journalists from covering the protest, trying to beat up journalists for the crime of going to a protest ground to try to cover the protest and hear from the protesters is very unfair and irresponsible of the security agent. And I'm happy that even Wole Soyinka and a lot of international commentators are appalled at the way journalists were molested during this process. The journalists are not, they were simply doing their job, and there's no reason for anyone to molest a journalist carrying out his lawful duty. If things improve in Nigeria, the kind of tension that we saw in the days leading, that we experienced in the days leading to the protest would not have happened. And the demands that people are making, yes, some of those demands, I do not agree with some of the demands, because I see some of those demands are unrealizable. But the ones that the president, the low-hanging fruits among those demands, I expect the president to do something to address those demands and try to find a solution so that we can have a country that we will all be happy to live in. Not a country where hunger is turning people to beggars, and destroying homes. That's not what we want to see. We want the situation to improve. People are hardworking, they are not lazy. But many hardworking people have today been turned to beggars who cannot fend for their families, who cannot say with certainty where their next meal will come from.
Wow. Okay, so we have one more story, and that story will definitely come as a surprise to you, BQ. It's to say congratulations to you and to your father, as he has been given the staff of office as the Akinri of Ekiri land. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the governor of Kogi State who made this happen. My 86-year-old father, it's a thing of joy for him to occupy the throne of his forefathers. The stool had been neglected for more than 600 years. But a governor came and he bore in mind the injustice over the years and felt that the best thing to do was to move the stool to a first-class stool. And then the governor that then supplanted him decided that it made sense to, after the stool was upgraded, decided that they should give him a staff of office. So we are happy. When you get a staff of office as a traditional ruler, it's like you are being confirmed on your job. You are being validated. You are being validated as a traditional ruler by the state government to carry on your responsibilities as the king over your people. So we are grateful that the governor listened to us, and the old man is very happy. His wife is very happy. We are happy I'm in the village. Um, it's a happy day for us, and we are really, really grateful to God.
Yes, congratulations. Congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you very
Theophilus.
much. And of course, that's our show for today. The edition of Issues with Jide will be on YouTube. If you have not watched it, you can watch it after today. Of course, special thanks to the maestro himself, Babajide Kolade-Otitoju, for those insightful analysis as always. Of course, and
Thank you,
thanks to...
Theophilus.
You're
Thank you,
welcome.
our esteemed viewers. Thank you for your love. Thank you for your support. It is our wish that our country will become greater, will become a country where everyone will be pleased to live in.
Well, thank you to our audience, of course, as the maestro has thanked you as well. Well, thank you for always joining us on every edition. Now, you can see the program again anytime by subscribing to our YouTube channel, TVC News Nigeria. Click the subscribe button to get the latest information. You can also follow us on our social media platforms at TVC News NG. I'm also on social media at Phil Ilama TVC. On behalf of the rest of the team, I am Theophilus Ilama. To have a wonderful week.
Thank you.